Hertz's Adventure, Encounter with the Spectacled Genie, Part 1. Using his finger to push his slipping glasses back up onto the ridge of his nose, young Hertz continued his journey. As far as he could see in every direction, the earth had been blanketed with a thick layer of white. The fine powder covering the ground in undulating lumps and clumps was actually made up of pale granules of sand, which were light and fluffy, like the freshly driven snow. "Where's the river supposed to be?" came the raspy voice of a youth named Midas from behind. Midas, a skinny boy with hair the color of tobacco leaves protruding from the butt of a hand-rolled cigarette, was Hertz's most trusted friend, and one who never hesitated to tag along with him on one of his impulsive adventures. "It's just a little further," young Hertz replied, without turning his head to look back at his companion. The two of them had set out for the spindly river which cut directly across the center of the parched white desert and the oasis beside it, a rest stop well known for being the last place of refuge for those travelers and their camels who were brave enough to cross the scorching dunes. Young Hertz and Midas had planned to camp there along the riverside that evening before attempting to trek across the remainder of the barren lands the following day. "So, do you think we'll really be all right?" Midas asked as he unwrapped the silver wrapper of a half-melted candy. "There's been a rumor going around about a genie appearing in these parts, and believe it or not, but some say that it'll even gobble up whole people." "Rumors are just that, rumors," replied young Hertz. "But I might consider their veracity if we ever did happen to come across a real one," he added, brushing off the idea with a chuckle. No sooner had the words left his mouth when a booming voice thundered from somewhere behind them.
"Then how about you start considering that now?"
Upon hearing this, young Hertz turned quickly around, his eyes searching for the source of the questioning voice. There, standing before him, was the figure of a decrepit genie, swathed in a robe of incomprehensible black, its back more bowed than the curled spine of a cat seeking its master's attention, and a pair of old spectacles perched atop the curved shape of its talon-like nose. Yet, the more young Hertz looked at the genie, the more unsure he became as to whether he was staring at something resembling a shriveled old man or a ghastly old woman. Midas froze in terror as he saw the tall, robed personage not far from his side. "I'm not scared," he stuttered, with a face wider than the desert sand surrounding them as he noticed young Hertz's gaze fixated on the genie. "My candy just got stuck in my throat is all," he croaked out as he bumbled through a jumble of ridiculous excuses in his head. A complex smirk of wrinkles curled across the genie's cheeks, giving the illusion that something else was living below its haggard skin.
"Oh my, how cruel it is to have been gobbled up whole. What a piteous fate for that sugared lump of candy in your gullet."
Not seeming to mind that the spectacles had begun to slip from its nose, the genie continued to shake its head, gripped by some mad delight.
"But fear not, my little drop of sweetness, for I shall avenge you by digesting the very marrow of these boys' bones as I change them into the dust of these arid lands."
The genie narrowed its turbid eyes and trundled toward Midas. In an instant, the sleeves of its robe were flung back, exposing thin, gnarled arms which shook like a pair of long, withered branches in the wind. The genie's fingertips extended, sharp as pointed tridents, and sped towards Midas's twitching face, advancing with precision, or at least that's what it seemed like, until they passed by the boy's face and stabbed futilely at the empty air. As if being slightly amazed by the failed attempt, the genie cocked its head in surprise, but soon thereafter took notice of what had been amiss. In a hurry, it brought both hands up to its ancient face and began to neatly adjust a pair of spectacles which sat crookedly on top of the bent nose. "I've had poor eyesight since I was a child, too," said young Hertz to the creature as it fumbled with the glasses. "And it looks to me like yours is worse than mine." As soon as the genie took in the young boy's words, another, much larger set of furrowed wrinkles appeared on its face.
"How did you know?"
it asked suspiciously. The genie tweaked the position of the spectacles on the bridge of its nose before turning back to young Hertz and inquired again.
"How did you know my eyes were so bad?"
Young Hertz exchanged incredulous looks with Midas, both taken aback by the genie's apparent obliviousness. However, while this was occurring, another expression had taken over the wizened face.
So that's it, huh? I see how it is.
The genie went on, as it raised a bony white finger and pointed at the set of glasses young Hertz was wearing.
Those are magical spectacles, aren't they?
The creature declared triumphantly. What? Said young Hertz with a confused look on his face.
Indeed, they must be,
the black-robed genie muttered as it cast its eyes heavenward while ignoring young Hertz's response. And once more, the crone-like figure began to tremble with glee. To be continued. Hertz's Adventure, Encounter with the Spectacled Genie, Part 2.
Those magical spectacles must be capable of seeing the true nature of anyone who stands before them.
After a fitful bout of shaking from excitement, but this time making sure to check that its own spectacles were aligned, the genie gazed down resolutely at young Hertz.
There's no point in having a boy such as yourself hang on to such an invaluable item. In fact, it would be in your best interest to hand them over. Otherwise...
It trailed off. But instead of elaborating on its threat, the genie simply extended its arms once more. This time, the genie picked up a boulder much larger than any normal person could lift, and young Hertz and Midas watched as the massive rock disappeared into the fiery depths of its open mouth, causing the wind to stir as it clamped down its distended jaws with incredible force. The genie gulped down the large rock as if it had been a light snack, and not a moment later, a hollow sound like something thrown into a deep well echoed in the depths of its belly.
So, have I made myself clear? If you do not hand over those spectacles, it is you who will end up being my next sweet morsel.
Midas looked at young Hertz with a frightful gaze.
Did you see that humongous mouth of his? He's the real deal, all right. It's just like the rumors say.
Yeah, but that still leaves us with another problem, sighed young Hertz. Without my glasses, I can't continue my travels. As young Hertz stood pondering his dilemma, another large boulder by his feet disappeared into the genie's voracious mouth, followed once again by the ominous hollow echo from beneath its sable garb.
But if he eats us, then we're both done for,
argued Midas as he stood shivering with fright, imagining the candy he had swallowed not minutes before. I guess you're right, concluded young Hertz, and he stepped closer to the genie. All right, good sir, we'll give in to your demands. Being swallowed whole doesn't sound like much fun, he declared.
And a wise choice you've made, boy,
replied the genie. After taking a long look at young Hertz's face, the genie narrowed its eyes and a plethora of wrinkles crinkled about their corners. Young Hertz said nothing as he unseated the pair of glasses from his nose and obediently placed them at the feet of the genie.
So these are magical spectacles,
the creature said in a voice quavering with excitement as it squatted down, its face drawing closer to where they lay in the sand. Impatiently, it tossed aside its own spectacles, and after blindly searching by hand for the object of its fascination through the soft, granulated sand, it picked them up and placed them snugly atop its nose.
These are no less than magical spectacles indeed,
it cried in a tremor of delight as it danced around, causing its robe to flutter about wildly.
With these I shall have nothing to fear!
And with one last deafening screech, it disappeared just as suddenly as it had arrived. The drifting echo of its voice faded, and the two boys once again stood alone on a sea of white sand. Midas scanned the area around them.
It looks like he's really gone,
he said, his voice weak with relief. Indeed, there was no sign as far as the eye could see of the black-robed figure. Feeling a pang of sympathy as he looked at the side of young Hertz's face, who strangely enough seemed to be amused about something, Midas began to rummage through his pocket looking for a piece of candy to offer to his friend as a token of solace over the loss of his trusty eyewear. Walking up to the other boy, Midas held out the piece of candy, its silver wrapper half undone.
Don't be disheartened, old friends. It's not like this is the last adventure we'll have. I think
I'm gonna be just fine, replied young Hertz. His voice was subdued, but the adventurer's eyes twinkled with laughter. Then, as if harking back to some past event, he continued his thoughts aloud. Man, that genie must have been blinder than a bat with no eyes, he said in astonishment. Midas stared at young Hertz uncomprehendingly until the other boy turned fully toward him, a grin splitting his face from ear to ear. Then Midas saw it, and a smile of his own spread across his face. For there, resting on top of his friend's nose, was something which had grown familiar to him over the years. In the end, it seems like the poor fool managed to mistake his own glasses for mine, young Hertz went on in a comical tone. So the ones you're wearing now are... Midas asked, though the silver rims of the glasses had already confirmed it. Yep, they're the exact ones I put on this morning. With a happy air, young Hertz took the sugary treat from his friend and popped it into his mouth. However, this time, as the honeyed glaze of the candy balls they carried in their mouths melted away, both he and his friend made certain not to swallow them whole. You know, Midas said as they walked along, even if there were such a thing as magical spectacles, I don't think they'd amount to anything in his possession, because as you and I both know, he has a habit of losing them when things matter the most. The end. Kitty-Talk For Dummies. Things to be aware of when speaking in feline. Pronunciation of the feline language has distinct characteristics depending on the region and may differ slightly from the following information. This could be considered comparable to dialects in the human tongue. In addition, since the number of elongated vowel sounds, indicated by the tilde character, are intimately related to a cat's personality and emotional state, there is quite a broad range of variation. That being said, I have attempted to compile a list of the most common expressions. Specific examples.
Nyaon.
You're absolutely right. Strong affirmation.
Nyago.
This way, when guiding.
Nyao.
This is it.
Nya ya ya.
An expression of delight.
Nya ya go.
Hold up, when urging to be cautious.
Nya.
These nails are bothering me, when agitated.
Nya.
I'm hungry.
Nyaon.
An expression of caution.
Nyaon.
I'm tired.
Nyaon.
Who are you?
Nyaon.
Yes, that's right.
Nyao.
What's wrong?
Nyao.
So we meet again, fleshy thing.
Nyago.
It's been a while. How have you been?
Nyaon.
Goodbye.
Nyao.
Yes, that's exactly right. Strong affirmation.
Nyago.
Hello.
Fumya.
A yawn.
Meow.
What did you just say, O hairless one? An expression of reproach.
Meown.
You are welcome, squishy pink thing.
Meow.
I'm hungry. Kitten talk.
Nyago.
I'm sorry. The Erbe Woodpecker. A bird of legends. The Erbe Scenic Route is a road lined with beautiful groves of slender trees on each side of its cobbled path. A notable sight frequently appearing in ancient royal court literature, it is thought by researchers that the scenery which knights once laid eyes on was far more spectacular than that which is seen today. Sadly, those vivid colors appearing in days of yore have long since been lost. Those awe-inspiring hues of which are written in poem and song refer to the plumage of a single bird. Its name, the Erbe Woodpecker. Presently, it is exceptionally rare to catch a glimpse of this brilliant azure bird. In fact, its extinction has even been suggested on more than a few occasions. In an interesting light, traditional songs sung by knights of times past make frequent mention of these birds as being a common sight. It undoubtedly seems as though there used to exist an incomparably large population of these woodpeckers, in contrast with their meager numbers in recent times. This brings us to the pivotal question of what fate exactly befell these birds over the course of the last several hundred years? A peculiar mode of life. Although the Erbe woodpecker is in fact a woodpecker, it does not peck holes in the trunks of trees. The reason being, it cannot. In general, woodpeckers use their beaks to bore holes in the boles of trees for nesting, but for the Erbe woodpecker, this is an impossible task. Consequently, they figured out another way to deal with this problem. Even if they do not bore the hole themselves, there are many other nesting holes for them to choose from. That's right, they will usurp a nesting hole made by another species of woodpecker. The Erbe woodpecker, with a beak perfect for catching insects and its clever ploy of stealing a fellow's nesting hole, was believed to have the traits that would allow it to prosper indefinitely. Invasion by an invasive species. A sudden change occurred when a new, larger species of woodpecker came to live in the forests inhabited by the Erbe woodpecker. This larger species had managed to migrate by way of boat from its distant native land. As nautical technology developed and trade began to flourish, the coming and going of marine vessels became increasingly dynamic. However, those which traveled on these boats and ships were not always human. Blending in with various freight and cargo, these creatures from other lands managed to come ashore one after another. With the introduction of this larger species of woodpecker, those smaller species which were once endemic to Liberl gradually left the Erbe forest in search of new habitats. Life also became problematic for the Erbe woodpecker, as its nesting hole size differed greatly from the outsiders. Yet, despite these drawbacks, it continued to stay in the forest. With the other small species of its habitat being driven out, finding another woodpecker's nesting hole became increasingly difficult. If a nesting hole could not be found, the Erbe woodpecker, of course, could not reproduce either. Thus, chances for reproduction among its kind gradually decreased, and a long era of decline set in among them. Cleverness and their eventual downfall. The Erbe woodpecker, with its clever methodology of using the nesting holes of others, enjoyed a brief period of prosperity. However, having abandoned their ability to bore holes for themselves some millennia before, left them unable to cope with the abrupt changes in their environment. On the other hand, those other species of woodpeckers, despite having been displaced by invasive species countless times, have continued to prosper today, as they have in times past. There are many things which we ourselves can learn from these tiny birds, so if you should happen to see one of these azure rarities flying amongst the trees of the grove-bordered avenue on the Erbe scenic route, please remember the struggle they have been forced to endure. 31 Cypress Trees. The good farmer Sheprot planted 5 cypress trees in his garden. The good farmer Sheprot dunged the earth carefully about them. The good farmer Sheprot suffered a year of pestilence. The good farmer Sheprot watched as all of his trees withered away. The good farmer Sheprot planted another 7 cypress trees. The good farmer Sheprot dunged the earth about them even more. The good farmer Sheprot suffered a year of bitter winter. The good farmer Sheprot watched as all of his trees snapped in the biting cold. The good farmer Sheprot planted still another 9 cypress trees. The good farmer Sheprot dunged the earth about them furthermore. The good farmer Sheprot saw his trees grow into a great canopy. The good farmer Sheprot watched as all of his trees broke under the weight of a great snow. The good farmer Sheprot planted yet another 11 cypress trees. The good farmer Sheprot plucked those which were frail and cast them into the fire. The good farmer Sheprot suffered another year of pestilence and great winter. The good farmer Sheprot watched as his last tree grew into a magnificent fir. The good farmer Sheprot, in order to confect a single grand cypress, the good farmer Sheprot planted 32 cypress trees. The good farmer Sheprot, with his loving goodness for them all, the good farmer Sheprot brought 31 cypress trees to the depths of ruination. The 100 Days War. Outbreak of war. In spring 1192 of the Septian calendar, a single cannon shot shook the Hawking Gate, situated in the northern part of the Liberl kingdom. This marked the beginning of an invasion later known as the 100 Days War, and the moment in which the raging golden stallion assailed the noble white falcon. During this time, the Hawking Gate was little more than a reinforced medieval rampart. It easily succumbed to the round fired by one of the Empire's Reinford Company-built orbital tanks, leaving a section of the aged barrier fractured beyond repair. And as the Liberl Kingdom's other defensive walls were hit in succession by a fuselage of cannonballs, they too fell under the explosive impact and were reduced to a mountain of rubble. Declaration of war. At about the same time that the first cannon shot was fired, a single letter from the Erebonian embassy, located in the royal city, was delivered to Queen Alicia. More specifically, it was a writ containing a declaration of war by the Erebonian Empire upon the Liberl Kingdom. In terms of diplomatic wisdom, the propriety of the declaration was established by being handled prior to the preemptive strike. But in this instance, there was hardly a difference in time between when the two occurred. In short, firing the first shot at the exact moment war was declared on the Liberl Kingdom made it possible for the Erebonian Empire to guise their preemptive strike as one of legitimacy when the first bombshell hit. This could be referred to as a new diplomatic war tactic, though one incapable of being employed without a meticulous level of planning used in concert with an orbital communication system. Blitz tactics. After the destruction of the Hawking Gate, the Imperial Army began its invasion of Liberl in earnest. Overall, its troop strength was made up of 13 divisional units. This proved to be roughly half of the Empire's entire military force, and was such a massive deployment that it exceeded 3 times that of Liberl's entire royal army. Within a month after the outbreak of war, the Imperial Army had occupied nearly all of the Liberl territory. Only the Gransel region and Leisten Fortress, situated just off the shore of Valeria Lake, remained in opposition. So rapidly were these blitz tactics carried out that even the Calvard Republic, an ally of the Liberl Kingdom and longtime rival of the Erebonian Empire, never had the opportunity to dispatch auxiliary forces to aid its partner. However, in a following attempt by the Imperial Army to take direct control over the Sais Central Factory and Malga Mine, they instead found themselves on the verge of being forced to surrender to Queen Alicia, who remained entrenched within the royal city. Staging a counterattack. 2 months following the outbreak of war, the battle situation was altered in a way which no one could have previously anticipated. Unbeknownst to the Erebonian army, 3 patrol ships were quietly being developed behind the walls of Leisten Fortress. Upon completion, they were put under the direction of veteran commander General Morgan, and a large-scale counterattack was launched. These patrol ships, shielded by armor far superior to the tanks of their imperial counterparts, and mounted with a substantial amount of high-performance orbital weaponry, had also managed to boost their speed to over 1,800 selj per hour. Using these crafts, an independent mobile force lauded as the elite of the elite, Liberl's forces mounted an attack and quickly recaptured the checkpoints connecting the various regions. And as this strike was underway, they simultaneously launched an amphibious attack from Leisten Fortress, and one by one defeated the remaining isolated Imperial divisions. The end of hostilities. After just 3 months following the outbreak of war, the larger part of the Imperial Army's remaining divisions finally surrendered. However, as capitulation was at hand, there were indications of a surge of further reinforcements from the Imperial homeland, a move which galvanized other continental nations to follow suit and join the Calvard Republic in supporting Liberl. Together, they lambasted the Empire, and a formidable group of allied forces began to materialize. Amidst all the chaos, the Septian Church, in cooperation with the Bracer Guilds, called for an armistice, and after approximately 100 days from the start of the war, the hostilities came to an end. In the following year of 1193, in the Erbe royal villa on the outskirts of the royal city, a peace treaty was signed by both the Liberl and Erebonian sides. Although no indemnification was made, an official apology was offered up by the imperial government as they expressed that they had made a grievous error attributed to a tragic incident occurring within their borders. Septium Optic Annals, published by the Psi Central Factory. General Theory, the current state of orbital technology research. Particulars. 1. Research pertaining to orbital energy attributes on a quartz interface. 2. R&D for high-output orbital guns which utilize zero-defect crystals. 3. Statistical predictions of precipitation defects due to interference field formation. 4. Relative cascade geometry and propulsion efficiency under low orbital energy conditions. 5. Mechanical calculation acceleration through the use of orbital energy-storing cycloidal gears within a tourbillon. General Theory, the current state of orbital technology research. During these 50 years since the orbital revolution, the Central Factory has striven in the reform of orbital technology by working out a number of applicable methods for its use. Currently, the research findings of this same factory have been utilized in all facets of society and have greatly contributed to the development of industry. However, on the flip side of all of these remarkable achievements, the field of basic research has been disregarded as a thing of naught. What is orbital energy, and what are the fundamental operating principles of an orbment? Now in an age where social appraisal of technological research has become an unchallenged part of life, it leaves us to beg the question of whether or not we should return to the basics. Ruan Economic History, Volume 1. Table of Contents. 1. Ruan Economics prior to the orbital revolution. Urban transfiguration due to developments in nautical technology. Developments in industry and the rise of the working class. 2. Abolishment of the aristocracy and regional economics. Collapse of the oligopolistic system. Introduction. Economic history is a field of scholarship which looks back historically on economic activity, one of a number of actions carried out by people, and weighs its evolution in relation to the future. In fact, it would hardly be an overstatement to say that the state of the world following the orbital revolution was led by a series of economic dynamics. Dramatic progress in transit technology and improved productivity gave rise to a continental-scale flow of goods and people, which in turn resulted in a more explicit structure of interests making an appearance within governments among neighboring nations. This book aims to trace history sequentially from prior to the orbital revolution, and while setting Ruan apart from the rest of Liberl Kingdom, proceed to analyze the developments of regional economics. Ruan Economic History, Volume 2. Table of Contents. Preface. The World After the Orbital Revolution. 3. Ruan and the Orbital Revolution. Advent of the airship and the maritime industry. 4. The 100 Days' War and the Empire. The state of commodity distribution before and after the war. Disparity and the shifting empire. Introduction. The benefits in connection with the orbital revolution wrought mighty change in both production and transportation, the foundational elements of economic activity. The introduction of orbital technology to the manual industry increased production without leading to a consolidation of the workforce, and allowed outdated worker unions to commercialize and thereby erect a framework which supplied the market with a stable flow of diverse goods. On the downside, the progress of transit technology, beginning with the emergence of airships, internationalized economic competition in one fell swoop and created a situation which prompted a fierce utilitarian rivalry among nations. Economic rivalries such as these can be found skulking in the milieu of nearly all erupting strife in this present age, regardless of boundaries. Ruan Economic History, Volume 3, Table of Contents. Preface, The 100 Days' War in Ruan. 5. Ruan Economics After the War. The Appearance of New Entrepreneurs. Contrasting Tourism Resource Development Policy. 6. Challenges for the New Generation. Internationalization of airship routes and Ruan. Introduction. Though being in the midst of great advances with regards to transit technology following the orbital revolution, Ruan's economic epicenter remained as before, centered on the import and export of goods through its seaport, with the Erebonian Empire occupying a significant position as a strategic partner in trade. Consequently, at the conclusion of the 100 Days' War, cooling relations with the Empire meant serious repercussions for this seaport city. This situation forced merchants to tread new ground and, as a result, pioneered enterprise which created domestic demand and developed tourism resources. At present, though these measures and policies have finally begun to bear fruit, there still remain a number of issues which have yet to be resolved.